product policy, which is to recommending to direct staff to investigate developing such a policy and reporting back early February next year with an options analysis report, etc. So would anyone like to move the recommendation? Phil Clearwater, seconded by Glenn Livingston. And does anyone want to speak to the recommendation? Phil Clearwater, followed by Glenn.
Mayor and Councillors, I'll urge you to support the recommendation, and especially by way of the Council developing a policy which can be fast-tracked. I think the matter is really urgent. I think that when the government passed the legislation, they might have thought that it would work by way of controlling the synthetic drugs rather than driving them underground to a black market. But in fact, the problems that have emerged, and certainly my community, have been nothing short of horrendous. And like tomorrow, there's a protest outside one of the R18 shops, and that's understandable. It's understandable on the part of the community. Basically, yeah, at Lincoln Road, for example, the drug selling shop is right next door to Comcare, one of our mental health providers, and it's right over the road from a preschool. And it's about half a kilometre away from a primary school, another half a kilometre away from our major mental health hospital, Hillmorton. So I think in the interim, following the legislation, there hasn't been enough provision to actually, I guess, control those outlets or put in the necessary controls. The other thing I'd like to say is that I think that because this is such a widespread problem with the synthetic drugs, you're probably aware that they're incredibly addictive, okay? And I think there needs to be some major education around these drugs, as well as putting in regulatory controls. And so when the policy is drawn up, I'm sure that it will have a part which in effect is part of a healthy Christchurch, a healthy cities, so that in fact schools can be involved in an educational part. And we know that approach has worked incredibly well with the problem of smoking tobacco, and hopefully it'll also work with these other drugs.
Councillor Livingston.
Thank you. Just wish to, I suspect it's going to be 100% this one, but with the, it's more kind of an eyes wide open, really open with this. And what I want to do is actually highlight the 5 interim licences and those under consideration in the report, and actually highlight the location. So if you look at that, you can see the locations mentioned there are in some of the lower socio-economic areas of our city. Now, this kind of cynical placement of these outlets is paralleled in our sinking lid policy, if that comes our way again in the next 3 years, over the placement of pokie machines in the city. And also when we get to the local alcohol policy, there's some discussion there about the kind of cynical placement of liquor outlets in the lower socio-economic areas of our city as well. So I think it's with this kind of social trend, it's just a matter of keeping really our eyes wide open to this. The other item I wanted to mention has gone right out of my head, but I had a second point, so I'll just have to forget that.
Thank you. Paul Lonsdale.
I might cover that topic actually, Glenn. So I managed a number of shopping centres that sell these particular products, and I think it's been highlighted when they changed the regulation from normal dairy selling the products to R18 stores selling it. What that did is that that decision, the issue was dispersed across the city. Now it's been condensed into the areas where fewer outlets, and the problems that associate now around those outlets has been exacerbated by the fact that it's now in smaller areas and you see the problems. So I agree with everything that's been said so far. We need to think of some mechanism how we can control it further, because the antisocial behaviours that happen around these outlets is a problem. The problems that it causes with our youth is another problem. and its ongoing effect with the lack of education because of these products that have been consumed. And I think we really need to think quite seriously how we deal with this for the long term rather than just short-term solutions. So I think there's got to be a lot of work done, but I think we need to support this today.
Are there any other speakers? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. Carried. Thank you. Moving on to